Dinh-Kha did it again. Hello guys and welcome back to another cold episode. On today's episode we're taking a look at a Fire King because Dinh-Kha is doing something crazy in the TCG, which is winning multiple events with pure Fire King. That's right, we're also playing pure Fire King. Now in Master Duel it is quite significantly different, but this is based on the incredible tops of Dinh-Kha and his just quite outstanding performances. Now, clearly, he is an incredible player, so I'm not going to put anything past him. He could probably win with pretty much any deck. He's won with Sprite Runic Furhire. Like, he was one of the innovators on that deck. But, with that being said, genuinely speaking, this is a very fun deck, and yes, we could easily make this significantly better just by adding in the Fire King, or the Snake Eye cards, and it would be significantly more consistent and have higher highs. However, I wanted to have fun, and I really enjoy playing decks that don't just do the same combo and then basically win off of that. So I instead am playing Fire King, which is a deck that very heavily relies on interacting with the opponent and making sure that you are more adept at being able to play through various different interactions and end on various different things, which is why we are playing it. Yeah, let's just do the quick card by card and the explanation. So starting off with our starters, we have 3 Ponics. On normal or special, we have the ability to search a Fire King card. If a fire monster was destroyed, you could special summon it from hand. And if it's destroyed during the next standby phase, you can add it back to the hand. Fantastic card. We're also playing 3 Volcanics, pretty self-explanatory as well. On normal or special, you can destroy one other Fire King in order to add a Fire King, well, basically a Fire King from your deck. Sorry. You pop a fire in order to add a Fire King from deck to hand, and then you can also modulate its level to that level of the search monster, and if destroyed, it special summons the High Avatar Garunix, which is the OG Garunix. Technically, it's not the OG Garunix, but it kind of is the OG Garunix. Don't worry about it. It's the OG Garunix. So, that's what we're doing with that. Having the ability to get one of these in your opening hand is very, very useful. So, that's pretty much it. We're also running, of course, the 1 High Avatar as a basically brick. It's not bad, though. If it's destroyed, you can during the next standby phase, you can special summon it back, and then it destroys all of the cards on the field. Sorry, all of the monsters on the field. And then also, if it's destroyed by battle, it special summons the Fire King, which is kind of cool. We're also playing 2 Sacred Fire King Garunix, which is the new Garunix, which is very useful, where if a monster is if a fire monster is destroyed by battle or card effect, you can special summon this card from hand or grave, and on summon it can pop a Fire King from deck, hand, or face up field, and then add some attack to it, which is very, very useful, just like a big guy to put onto the field. We're also playing the 2 Kirin. In the TCG, we have 3 of this, so that's pretty nice, but we don't have that here. So there's that. I'm also only playing 2 Sacred Fire King, mostly due to the fact that while Dinh-Kha is playing 3, they also don't have things like Max C, and it's a more tournament style setting where having access to 3 means that you are, in a best of 3, you can like side them out and stuff like that. We don't really have the ability to do that, so I'm playing a few other cards quite differently in regards to that. But we're also playing the 2 Kirin, which is very nice. During the main phase, pop a card, and then special summon this guy, pop a fire monster that you control or in the hand, and then you can special summon it. And then if it's destroyed, you can special summon a Fire King from hand or grave, and then pop a card on the field. This is very, very useful due to the fact that destroying it means that you basically have an additional removal piece, and you can bring back something like Arvada, or other such cards. We're also playing 1 piece of Arvada and Barong. Barong, just if it's destroyed during the next standby phase, searches a card. That's pretty much all that's here for. But Arvada is a monster negate. When a monster effect is activated while this card is on the field, you can negate the activation, and then it destroy a fire monster from hand or face up field. One other fire monster. And then if it's destroyed and sent to the graveyard via anything, you then have the ability to reborn a Fire King monster, and then it's destroyed during the end phase. This is actually pretty useful, having the ability to guarantee a pop, but it also reborns a guy, which means you can use it to reborn Kirin, and then Kirin can reborn the Arvada again, which is pretty good. So those two kind of like cycle each other, which is pretty useful. We're also playing the 2 apiece of Fire King Island, which searches a Fire King by destroying a fire. We're also playing the 2 Sanctuary, which puts Fire King Island onto the field, protects your Fire King Island, and also has the ability during the opponent's turn to, if an opponent special summons a monster, you can immediately Xyz into a Fire Xyz monster using Fire King monsters you control. This basically means you can go into Hyong, which is very useful given the fact that Hyong on summon destroys the field. Just destroys all the monsters on the field, which is very, very useful. So, two apiece of each of those. We could play 3. I like playing 2, mostly due to the fact, or 2 apiece, right? We could play 3 Fire King Sanctuary and the 1 Island instead, like Dinh-Kha. But the reason I'm only playing 2 and 2 is because more often in Master Duel, you're going to see Fire King Island get removed in some capacity, and having the ability to see that second one is very, very important. So I'm just not really I'm not really willing to kind of have my board wiped and then not still have access to this. We're also playing 2 Fire King Skyburn, which just targets Fire King monsters and destroys the same amount of cards your opponent controls. So you target your own monsters, you target your opponent's cards, you pop them all. Which is pretty nice, and then on top of that it has a bonus effect to protect your Fire King monsters from destruction. The rest of the cards are pretty simple. The 2 Maxi, 3 Fuwa Loss, 3 Ash Blossom. We're also playing Thrust, as well as a bunch of targets for Thrust, that being Triple Tack, Harpy's Feather Duster as well, and then a bunch of traps as well. 3 Imperm, 3 Impulse, very nice. That's one of the big things about this deck. It has the ability to play Impulse very effectively, which is so good right now. And then we're also playing 2 Called By and a Pot of Extrav, which is kind of interesting. As for the extra deck, it's we're playing a bunch of double cards because of Pot of Extrav. You could just take out the Pot of Extrav. You don't have to play it and then play a bunch of one-ofs, so that you don't have to craft a whole bunch of cards. We're playing 2 Hyong. Realistically, we should be playing 3. We're playing the 1 Typhon as well, and then it's just a bunch of Link monsters. We're playing Anima, we're playing Owl Mirage, we're playing Doolittle as a way to grab back additional cards. We're playing the Sunlight Wolf, 2 Hita, the 1 Dark, the 2 SP Little Knight, 2 Promethean Princess, and the 1 Amblo. And that's it for the deck. Let's hop into the replay and show you how this deck performs. Alright, so here we are going first, and let's see what we can accomplish. We started off here with the Pot of Extrav, which is very nice, so we're immediately going to activate that, and of course I end up banishing my 2 Hyongs, so now we just don't have that, which is something. But we did end up drawing into Fire King Sanctuary, so we're going to start with that and just immediately place the Fire King Island, and then I realized, oh, I should probably normal summon Volcanics first, so I do that instead. I also did get Barong, so we popped that. Then we're going to go for the Ponix. Ponix is going to search out Skyburn, and then we are going to use the Fire King Island, popping our Volcanics and grabbing Kirin. This will trigger this will trigger Garunix. Now you might be wondering, why didn't you activate the Volcanics? Because this was the first game I played with this deck, and I had forgotten to put in the high avatar Fire King high avatar Garunix. So I forgot to put in the OG Garunix. So oops. That just isn't in my deck right now. That being said, that's okay. We're going to pop the Arvada, which will then allow us to summon out the Kirin, which will then allow us to summon out the Arvada, which we can then utilize with the Promethean Princess to bring back the Arvada. I will set the Skyburn and pass the turn. This could have been a little bit better. We could have basically had the Arvada and Promethean and a Reborn to go into Amblo, which would have been a little bit better, but for the most part, it's more or less what we wanted. We do get a search as well with the Barong, so we search out the Ponix. My opponent's going to reveal that they are on tier limit, so out comes the Soliak, not too surprising. They're going to go for the Sheeran, and I'm like, that's A-okay. And out comes Sheeran. Now, I could have done a bunch of things here. I could have gone for, like, the Arvada or what have you. But for the most part, I was like, I'm not really too concerned about the Sheeran. I'm more concerned about the Fusion Summon. So I'm going to try and negate with the Arvada with those Fusion Summons. My opponent goes for the Rhino Heart here. I'm going to elect to negate. This is just a mistake. This is just a mistake. I should have allowed them to do that and then impulsed, because then they wouldn't have had anything, and I could have kept the Arvada for later. Alas, it's not that big of a deal. So they negate, we gotta go and trigger our Garunix, but alas, they did end up milling their Shuffler, which is kind of the danger of allowing the Sheeran to resolve, but I still feel like it was the correct play. Because then we wouldn't have had the negate for Rhino Hearts. So there you go. Anyway, out comes Redoer, and I'm like, that's not too big of a concern. They're gonna activate the Redoer since it is not a cost to tag out. We're just gonna pop him. So we're gonna pop the Arvada as well as the Redoer, so they don't get their Fusion Summon. And we're going to trigger the Arvada to bring back the Kirin, as well as the Ponix in hand to special summon itself out. And with the Ponix, we can actually search another card here, which is pretty good. I believe I searched a second Skyburn, which is, again, pretty good. They're going to go for Foolish Burial, because, of course, they have an additional way to put a guy into the grave. But alas, that's fine. They're going to go for the Happiness here, and I'm like, oh, wait, I can't Impulse here. Shoot. And that's where I was saying earlier, I should have Impulsed I should have allowed the Rhino Hearts to resolve, and then Impulsed there, and then I would have had the ability to Impulse, or to negate both Fusion Summons that they have access to. So that's just a bit of a mistake on my part. They're going to go for the Tear Cache and mill the second Shuffler, which is kind of crazy, but we're going to go for the Impulse as well. Now, granted, the rest of their mills have been pretty mid, but they did end up hitting both of their Shufflers, and that was kind of it. We do Impulse here because we don't have another trap in grave. This isn't going to be destroyed, so I'm not really too concerned about that. They're going to go for Heartbeat to pitch the Meta Noise to grab back the Tear Cache. Now, I don't hate this play because, like, you kind of need something. So, yeah, this is a pretty fine play. They're going to go for the Tear Cache and mill an additional set of cards. I don't know why they didn't shuffle back the Fire King Island. That was obviously the better play. And then they link off into SP Little Knight, which is a choice. And of course, they target the Fire King Island, which nukes my field, technically. But that doesn't really matter because we do get to trigger the Kieran, and I have Kieran in hand as well, so like I could have just popped there if I really wanted to. But it's not that big of a deal because, sure, they're going to be able to shuffle away 3 of our cards, but I have way more targets than that, so it didn't matter that they had both Shufflers. We still have the ability to go off from here. Now, I do end up kind of making a mistake here. I summon the Volcanics and I pop here, and then I use the Volcanics and pop, and I search out Garunix. Garunix is just a mistake here. This should have been Ponix. If I had Ponix here, we actually do have the ability to, like, play the game. But I'd already used Garunix, and I had forgotten about that because the turn was pretty long. But yeah, I should have just searched out Ponix. Ponix would then be able to be normal summoned and search out to the second Fire King Island set. So, bit of a goof on my part, but not that big of a deal. That's it. Alright, so here we are once again going first, and is that La Cucaracha? That's crazy! But let's actually see how this game plays out. We're going to start off here with the Volcanic, so we're going to normal summon it and pop the Ponix to grab Garunix. Garunix is then going to special summon itself and pop the Arvada. Arvada is going to reborn our guy. We're not going to activate the effect, and we're going to go for the Fire King Island. Fire King Island is going to search up the Kieran, and we're going to use Volcanics to go into the High Avatar. It's actually here this time. Here, we can now go into the Sunlight Wolf, into Anima, and then Sunlight Wolf can add back the Garunix. Now, why are we doing this? Well, Garunix is kind of not great in grave, mostly due to the fact that it can be like called byed or shuffled away or something else of that nature if it's in grave. So being able to just like add it back to hand, one, it means that if my opponent were to remove a fire monster from my field, I still have a fire monster to trigger the Kieran, which is pretty useful. And two, more importantly, it keeps it out of the grave for those style of effects, which means we can use it from hand more effectively. So it's just a nice thing to do if we can, and we have the materials necessary to do that, so we're going to do that before going into the Promethean Princess. Out comes Promethean, we're going to activate the effect and bring back Ponix, and now we can actually activate the Ponix effect to grab up the Skyburn. So we're going to go into Amblo Whale at this point as well, set one, and pass the turn. We do have Maxi Impulse and the Skyburn later. We can't use the Skyburn now, but if we were to be able to special summon this Kieran, which is highly likely, we're able to do that. My opponent draws for turn and, of course, reveals the Harvey's Feather Duster, which means the Skyburn is now dead, but that's not that big of a deal. Amblo Whale is going to get destroyed off of the Fire King Island, and I'm going to attempt to summon back the Sunlight Wolf so that we have a fire on the field for Promethean Princess. Granted, we can also just summon this Garunix, which is exactly what I do after seeing the called by. So, hey, good thing we added that Garunix back to the hand. We're going to go for the Garunix here and pop the Kieran. Kieran is then going to special summon the Arvada. My opponent then reveals another card that absolutely would have cooked me if I did not have the ability to add back that Garunix, which is Soul Release. So, yeah, Soul Release would have been absolutely crazy against Garunix and against this entire deck. They could have gone Soul Release and just banished the entire grave, and I wouldn't have had much to deal with that. So, there's that. They're going to banish a whole bunch of cards, which does suck, but it's not that big of a deal. They're going to go for the Mecha Module and then into Mobilize Engage. Now, I could have Impulse here, and realistically, I absolutely should have. This is just a genuine mistake on my part. But I do go for the Maxi here. They send away the card, and then out comes Hayate, and I elect to not actually negate the Hayate for two reasons. One, I'm almost certain that they are going to go for Engage, which is fine. And 2, I'd much rather negate Kagari, since they don't really have anything. If Engage goes to Grave, this does 2 things. 1, Shizuku is now offline for them to get Engage if we negate the Kagari, which is great. Love to see that. And 2, more importantly, while they do have the ability to set it off of a mecha module, the more important thing is that it gets it out of the deck, which means they're less likely to draw it. Does that make sense? Makes sense. So I'm like, that's fine. You can send that. Go into Kagari. That's a-okay as well. They're also under Max E, which means that I'm going to draw more cards if they do end up going into like Shizuku and stuff like that. We did draw into Ponix, which is hilarious. So now I can go for the Arvada, negate the Kagari, popping our own Garunix, and then go into the Ponix to grab the Sanctuary. And at this point, I'm pretty comfortable. They go for the linkage here, which is a choice. I don't know why they do this. This is kind of silly. I feel like you absolutely have to go for the Engage, but I guess the idea is like, oh, they're going to pop a bunch of my cards. Might as well have a thing that you can chain to like get rid of the guy. That's fine. We're going to do a little bit more of our comboing. We're going to go Garunix, popping the Barong for later. We're going to then go Volcanics because we need to be able to use the Arvada to special summon back a guy. So that's what I'm electing to do here. So we're going to go for the Ponix here. My opponent then goes for the Linkage, and I'm like, oh, okay, that's fine. However, I did end up drawing Called By, so it doesn't matter. This was a smart play, and I understand it, but it doesn't matter. We're going to go for the Hyong here, and we're going to pop the field. And then I make a bit of a mistake. What I should have done is go combat. I had Lethal here, and it's very simple. I have Skyburn in hand. They have a card on field. I just go combat. I attack in. I use Skyburn to pop both this and the Mecha Module. Hyong then has the ability where if it's destroyed while it has material, you can special summon Fire Kings up to the number of materials it had. So you could just special summon back the Hyong as well as any other thing and attack for lethal. That's what I should have done. I didn't do that because I'm silly. And I instead do this play. So I go Kieran and I still just special summon back this guy and just go to combat. It's still good, right? We're in a very commanding position. There's very few cards that get them out of... Actually, I don't think there's a single card that actually gets them out of this at this point. Theoretically, if you were to go Engage into Engage, maybe 3 cards would be able to do it, but even then, it's not a guarantee at this point. So, yeah. They do end up going into Ray into kind of... This is all just them spinning their wheels at this point, but pretty much the game is over. They're going to go Kagari, but it's been called by, so it doesn't matter. Then they're going to go into Shizuku and attempt to go, and then go to combat. I just allow them to walk over the Arvada. I could have popped there, but there's not really a point to doing that. So I'm just going to then get a whole bunch of cards because, yeah, all of these basically trigger off of Battle Destruction. So we're going to special summon up a whole bunch of guys. They're going to go for the Ray. I'm going to go for my Ponix. We're going to search out the Fire King Sanctuary. I didn't need to do this. I got to negate it with Arvada, but it's not like Ray's going to do anything. I actually just negate here, and we pop the Barong. So, yeah, again, this game's like over. I can literally also just go combat here. I do go for the Barong to search out Volcanics, and the Ponix is going to add itself back to hand as well. I have 7 cards in hand, one of them being an Ash Blossom. At this point, the game is well and truly over. So, good game. Alright, and we're back with the deck, and I know that, like, the last video I did was also Fire King, but for the event. However, I just wanted to showcase Fire King. I think it is a very solid deck. I don't think it's a deck that everyone wants to play, nor is it a deck that everyone can play. And what I mean by that is, like, it is a deck that, 1, doesn't suit everyone's playstyle, but 2, also requires you to already know how to play Fire King at an in-depth level, and it's not something you can just, like, pick up and play. Right? So there's that. I don't think it's, like, the hardest deck to play, but I also find these style of decks, things like Labyrinth, things like Fire King, more control-oriented style decks, where you're more so playing through what the opponent is doing, to be a little bit easier for me, specifically. I'm terrible at combo decks, and I understand that. So this deck is just, like, very good for me. It's very easy for me to understand and to play better than, like, a big combo deck like Manadium or Yubel or something else of that nature. That being said, I still just really enjoy this deck. It's fun to play, which I think matters a lot more than almost anything else currently in Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel. Having fun is kind of difficult. Also, one thing of note, this deck plays through almost every single hand trap very well. It doesn't always, but it does have the ability to beat pretty much every single hand trap. It beats Droll. Droll might be the hardest thing depending on the hand, right? That's probably the hardest one. But, like, it beats Nibiru because it can just not play into Nibiru. It beats both Maxi and Fuelos and Perulia, right? So it doesn't play into any of those particularly well. It can absolutely play through an Ash Blossom. It can play through or dodge things like Effect Failure or Imperm. It doesn't really care too much about, like, Purge or Impulse unless they are paired with an additional card, like, for example, an Ash, right? And then on top of that, it also has the ability to play a whole bunch of these hand traps as well. As you can see, we're playing like half of the entire deck as just non-engine, which makes it very strong at just preventing the opponent from killing you on that first turn, right? Or by like punishing them for going ham, right? With triple tactics thrust and stuff like that. Now, it's not perfect, obviously, right? I didn't play against like Azumina Snake Eye or something like that and immediately lose to them just drawing every card in their deck. But alas, not really that big of a deal. Again, it's mostly for fun. So there you go. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys did indeed enjoy. If you did, like us very much, appreciate it. And remember to always stay frosty. Bye bye.